Hi and welcome to the video. I'm Dame, this is Dame Over, and today we are on Battlefield 5. I know, the game is dead. What am I doing playing it? Well, I've been away from Battlefield 5 for about 10 months now, and I thought it was a good idea to jump back in and just see what has changed within the game in that time. And just to give you guys a little bit of context, I didn't choose to stop playing Battlefield 5. I've actually been working on a cruise ship, so I only got back home a few weeks ago, so playing online just simply hasn't been an option. So I think I've got a pretty fresh and new perspective to all of the new content that's dropped in the time that I've been away, and I felt like jumping back in now is gonna kind of give Battlefield 5 a clean slate for me. I've not got much of an impression because it's been such a long time since I have played it. So I jumped in and I tried to play some games with each of the classes in turn, using some of the new weapons and checking out the new maps, and this is what I found out. So to begin with, I was actually pretty disappointed in the lack of action, which is weird because it's a first-person shooter. It's a kind of a war simulator, so not having much action is very, very disappointing. It kind of went back to the old meme that it was actually Marathon Simulator 2018. And from these clips, you can see just how much I was running, not doing anything. I covered so much ground before even getting into a fight. I felt like one of the frickin' proclaimers. And this was a big gripe that I had with Battlefield 5 when it first came out even. I don't want to be running for 20 minutes to eventually get in a fight on my own, and it's a 1v3 situation, so obviously I'm gonna die, to then have to go through that whole cycle again. It's not what you expect from a game that's labelled as action, as FPS, as a shooter. This game is meant to be exciting. It's meant to be cinematic. There's meant to be lots of gunfights, lots of gunfire, lots of you dodging bullets and shooting people in the back of the face. So having to complete a full 10k before having any need to fire a gun does not for a fun game make. Which kind of brings me on to my next point. Now, I was solo lobbying here. I was just jumping in on my own, didn't have anyone else playing with me, so I was being put in a random squad. And part of the reason that I spent so much time running in to actually get involved in any of the action was because my teammates were deciding to lie down and hide on the very fringes of the map. And yes, it's partly the fault of the players for choosing that style of play, which isn't a problem. Play however you want, but they're doing it because it's the most rewarding way to play. Laying down, waiting for someone to run past, not moving, not engaging in the gameplay, not being a part of the team, not playing the objective, not getting shot at by the overpowered tanks from 76 miles away is the best way to play Battlefield 5. And it's all down to the game design because there's almost no incentive to move anywhere. And if you don't choose to play that way, there's such a ridiculous amount of time in between gunfights that it's just as boring. Now this is on Conquest. I played all of the games you're seeing in the background on Conquest, which my friends and I worked out very early on in the game's life cycle that it's pretty boring and generally very slow on the whole, mostly down to the maps being about 5 times bigger than they should be. So we would opt to play either Frontlines or Domination. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. They've removed those game types, and honestly, I'm really pissed off because Frontlines and Domination were the saving grace from my experience on Battlefield 5. Both game types massively reduced the time you spent just running across empty ground not doing anything. They both encouraged you to play the objective very heavily, and especially in Frontlines, forced players to engage in gunfights instead of rewarding most of the lobby for sitting still behind a bush or a rock or a palm tree, or just right out in the open because what's the point of hiding when you can't be seen anyway, and just laying there waiting for someone to run past. Essentially, the game loop sucks. I don't really feel like I'm playing a first-person shooter. What it feels like is the mid-game in a battle royale. There's a gigantic map that you have to traverse, and you're constantly searching for enemies, hoping you don't get shot in the back. That's what Battlefield 5 feels like on most of the maps. And on these larger maps as well, it just feels like there's no real cohesion, because there are people running off in every direction simply trying to find some action. You don't really feel like you're part of a team at all. Especially on Iwo Jima, I felt like it could have had 100 players each side and still felt pretty empty. And there are still lots of problems in the game that I thought would have been eventually sorted out. I mean, the mantling still does not work consistently, and that was something that the devs spent a particular amount of time trying to sort out. Visibility, like I mentioned before, is still a problem. I mean, I don't care. I don't really give a shit if it's meant to be realistic or not. Sure, if you're hiding completely concealed in a bush, fine, whatever, you can see out of it. But if I can't see you when you're stood in front of me or you're hiding in a corner, that's not playing a video game. I need to be able to see the enemy to be able to kill them. Getting killed by someone when they're invisible, when they're not supposed to be invisible, is the most infuriating thing ever. And then there's the more obvious stuff, like weapon balance. I had jumped on the game after 10 months of being away, and I could still outshoot a sniper using a semi-auto rifle. And that, to me, is just ridiculous. As soon as I peek, I should get my head shot off or get a slug in the middle of the chest and die. But the recon class is still outmatched by so many of the other weapons that are in the other classes. Vehicle balance is another thing that I thought would have been sorted out. I'm not going to go into huge detail with it because, frankly, I don't have the energy to argue with myself about it. Body dragging, still not in the game. Would have been a really useful tool. It's very unfortunate that it's not here. I mean, just don't advertise it if you're not going to deliver, guys. I mean, I know I sound very upset about it and all of the things I've said are negative, but I do have some positives as well. It does still have some cinematic moments, which is a big feature of the Battlefield franchise, and some of the maps are actually really good and do allow players to play in a more interesting and exciting way. The gunplay is still pretty decent overall, and it was surprisingly easy to pick back up again. The sound design has improved from what I can remember. I mean, in particular, hearing footsteps, which makes a very welcome change compared to Warzone, where you can't hear anything. I mean, I don't know if any particular attention has actually been paid to improving it, but going from nothing in Warzone to hearing lots in Battlefield 5 does make a very big difference from my experience at least. But one really big point for me is that MMGs were almost non-existent from what I could tell. I barely got killed by any, and I didn't see many people running around with MMGs, so at least that issue has been addressed. So overall, jumping back onto Battlefield 5 after 10 months was a disappointing experience. I don't think it was unreasonable to expect a large shift around for this game. There was lots of it is in place, and it has always had a lot of potential to be a very good game, a very good experience, but honestly, it's just not very satisfying. And before I left, I was only really playing Battlefield 5 to create content. I was trying to come up with unique ideas that I could use to put in videos, and playing the game itself just wasn't a very appealing thing to do. And that's still the case. Like I mentioned in my previous video, I've got no future plans to continue making content or continue playing Battlefield 5. As we all know by now, EA and DICE have completely stripped their support from it, so there's not really any point to doing it anymore. There's not going to be any new content to give to you guys, so I might as well put my energies in something else. And you know what? I'm not actually that bothered by it. If the experience I had jumping back in after 10 months away is just going to continue in the same fashion, then I'm not going to miss it at all. And you know what? I'm just going to be excited for the next Battlefield title, and like you guys, keep my fingers crossed that it actually lives up to the mark. But that's just what I think, and apparently I had quite a lot to say about Battlefield 5. This video is way longer than I thought it was going to be, but more importantly, I want to know how you guys feel about Battlefield 5. Make sure you jump in the comments and let me know if you agree or disagree with anything that I've said. Let me know how you feel about DICE and EA stopping the live service as of the next update. And I also want to let you guys know that I've started up my Patreon page again, so if you want to become a Dame Operative, you can help support the channel from as little as $1 a month by going into the description, hitting that link. It will take you straight to the Patreon page. And until next time, that's Dame over. Peace.